after we learned that Omar Mateen stopped in the middle of the Orlando terror attack to pledge his allegiance to the Islamic State, some in the Muslim community realized they would again be called on to explain how folks become radicalized. And in this case, to answer for some of Islam's teachings against homosexuality. More than 200 Muslims, including dozens of American imams and scholars, issued a joint statement condemning the attacks, but that did not satisfy some of the critics. Let's again turn to our panel. So this goes back to the discussion we were just having about whether some of these beliefs are baked into the Islamic faith, and I'll ask you about that, sir. Go ahead.
See, I've studied the Quran for 7 years, and nowhere in the Quran does it condone killing of an innocent human being. It actually says killing one person is equal to killing all of humanity.
The question is how can we expand this brand
yes.
beyond?
That's a great question,
community.
and that's exactly what we need to do, where American, non-Muslims need to understand what the Quran actually says. So when these extremists use the Quran, by the way, 97% of the people killed by these extremists are Muslims.
I know,
so,
of course.
So it's not about Muslim versus Christians versus Jews. It's about extremists killing for their own ideology, and the counter-ideology that we all come together and present.
But all of the extremists that we saw in those 7 attacks were Muslim extremists. They were all Muslim extremists.
They were.
I mean, you don't deny, because this is where people get upset. If you deny that is a real problem in the country. We saw these people in the front row had their relatives died in the Twin Towers that were knocked down by radical Muslims.
Megan, I've had family members die.
You and then Bo.
I've had lots of Muslim family members die from this too. It's a terrible thing, and I can empathize. But what I can also tell you is, unless you separate, what I would tell the administration today is, until you separate the extremists from the religion, and what I would
this
tell
administration is doing that. Go ahead, Bo. Go ahead.
When someone's killing someone, Allah Akbar, he's doing it in the name of his God, and that's extreme Islam, and that's the fact. And when we start covering it up, there are good people, but the point is we have to try to get the good people to turn the bad people.
Go ahead, ma'am.
So when the interpretation of groups like ISIS are effective at recruiting people, they're also effective because these people are excluded politically, socially, economically. We know that has to be part of the conversation. And so when presidential candidates say we should ban entire communities from entering the United States, we are feeding into that fear. We are feeding into that process, which is equally a problem.
What about that? Because the studies have shown it, as we saw in Orlando, that too often it's second-generation Americans whose parents immigrated, who the parents do fine because they still have their culture of origin, but the second generation, like Omar Mateen, do not do that well because they, for many reasons, but one of which is they feel ostracized and disliked. Go ahead.
So, I mean, I can tell you as a convert growing up, I grew up in the South, and I know plenty of Christians that I grew up with, people that claimed, Jesus is the greatest, and they're sitting there, they're saying that they are Christians and they live by that standard that's in the Bible, and yet we see people in those areas. I grew up watching people beat somebody of a different color. I saw somebody beat somebody because of their sexual preference. And in that case, they're saying you're against what God